Thank you, Concordia. Minister, as you're aware, this bill, I suppose, began its days as something that came out of the Indicon report and has been acknowledged by many. It was because of a lot of scandals and a lot of difficulties in the industry, which are where they are. We can't rewind the clock, unfortunately, and it has brought much of the industry into disrepute down the years. However, it is an attempt to try and deal with that, and while I know it has been at the committee stage already. We've had, pre-legislative a look at it and an examination of it, and it was through the Seanad, and some work was done there as well. And it has to be acknowledged that it is an attempt to try and move things forward and to make things work where there has been no workability in the past. And that has been, I think, the problem, and that has been acknowledged by the need to have the Indicon report in the first place. And indeed, the Morris report into the whole issue in 2015, the whole issue of the doping of dogs and all of that, just brought it home to people, the huge problem that there was in the whole area of greyhounds and what was happening on tracks and all of that. And I also have, in fact, a company that's quite close to me who does a lot of work on the tracks and on the mechanisms on the tracks and how they operate and all of that. And they found and told me all kinds of hair-raising stories about stuff that they've seen going on down the years. And, while there's no evidence to any of that, at the same time, people with no axe to grind come and tell you, God bless us if you've seen the kind of stuff that was going on. It really does bring it home that this is some industry that needs a hell of a lot of reform. And if this bill is to be successful, and that's one of the things I suppose around it, is that it will have to be very firm in making sure that the provisions in it are actually adhered to and that it's made work, and that the new board has teeth and drives home the message that there has to be an entire clean-up of what's gone on in the past, and that it cannot be allowed to continue the way it has been happening up to recently. The various subsections, and you went through them in quite detail in your speech, basically they cover almost every part of it from the point of view of the management of the industry from board level and how that works, and indeed the whole area of the recommendations in regard to how dogs are treated and how they're treated when they're being trained and when they're in their racing life and after that, and where they end up, and that's an issue that I know has concerned an awful lot of people down the years as to what has happened there. And it has to be said, of course, that we have chipping in place and we have all of those mechanisms of tracing in place, but unfortunately they didn't seem to be working in a lot of cases. The new membership of the board and the terms that they have, that it will only be for a 5-year term for a chairperson, as opposed to being there for life, basically, if they wanted to be, is just shows that the total unworkability of the situation that was there in the past. The parts of it on animal welfare, I think, is something that most people have their biggest concern about, and really that's the issue that I think we have to be sure that the new board and that this bill will deal with in a firm and constructive way. The issue of doping and how the fixing of races in the past was happening, and that even when dogs were found to be using all kinds of various means of enhancing their performance, or indeed inhibiting their performance in some cases, that this has been used, it seems, in a very uncontrolled manner, and that even when they were caught, there was little or no sanction. I think that's really at the core of what we need to make sure that we drive home in this bill, that it's not just about what we put on paper here, it's what happens out on the race courses, on the ground, the control committee and all of that actually do their work and do it properly. The increase in the fines, I think, is another step forward and a step in the right direction that will be bringing into place, and that there is, I suppose, a proper level of sanction there for when people breach the rules, and that breaching the rules is no longer going to be allowed. The issue of fair play comes into an awful lot of this, and really fair play has not been the byword of the greyhound racing industry, as we're aware, and that's why we're here. And I think that needs to be re-established. and needs to be re-established in a very firm way. And that means there has to be ownership taken of this entire process, not just by the Minister and the board and all of that, but everyone that's involved in the whole greyhound racing industry. And that's something that we look forward to see happening. The sale of greyhounds and the movement of greyhounds to other countries is something that I know has come up in the past and something that needs to be dealt with as well. Brexit, of course, is coming, and we're not sure what way that's going to end up. And I was interested the other evening, I had a phone call from a lady who actually keeps a greyhound as a pet, and she has her vet. She lives right on the border, and her vet is in Northern Ireland, and she brings the greyhound across the border to the vet and back again, and she's wondering what's going to happen in April. Will she have to get an import and export licence every time she brings the dog to the vet? So, you know, it's little things like that that brings you home as to what impact Brexit is going to have as well. The issue in regard to the numbers of litters of pups that a bitch can have and all of that, I think is something that, you know, is dealt with to some extent in the bill. It's something I think that we need to look at a little bit closer when we come into the committee stage and we're examining it. And as has been acknowledged by Deputy Cahill, I think there may be tweaks that needs to be looked at around many of these issues, and there may be some stuff that we have to tighten up a little bit, or maybe loosen up a little bit where appropriate. But in general, I think it's a good effort to move the situation forward and to change things for the better. And certainly we need to be doing that. The investigatory powers of the authorised officers are something that clearly needed to be brought under a new level of command and control, because there seemed to be very little there. Their ability to be able to actually do their job effectively and properly is something that was just lost in the past. And I think particularly integrity around that is something that needs to be examined very closely. Integrity around the authorised officers and how they do their job, and that they actually do their job, is something that I think was failing. And certainly some of the stories that I've heard pointed very critically to that as being one of the big problems we had there. The issues that I just came across it in the makeup of the board and how the board is made up and what reasons a person can be put off the board or taken off the board. I just thought it was an interesting one to see in it. One of the reasons for a member of the board to cease holding office is if they're bankrupt, or if they make a composition or arrangement with a creditor. And I have to say, Minister, I know some of the most outstanding and honest of people that have had to make all kinds of arrangements with creditors. And it seems very strange to see that in there. It was in it before, but I think in the context of where we are right now, there's hardly, I think probably every second person in the country over the last 5 or 6 years have had to make some kind of an arrangement with a creditor because of the state which probably they found themselves in, mainly due to the actions of various creditors in the past rather than themselves. So I think it's just something that needs to be looked at, and it's an example of how we need to examine this very closely in respect of that. But in general, and to come to, and I'm going to conclude, I won't take all my time, in general I think this is an effort to try and make a difference and to put something real in place. As I say, it comes on the back of what Indigan said and what Morris said. It comes on the back of an industry that has been lacking in integrity and has had huge difficulties in the past. And if we're going to try and restore something to it, or put some sort of shape on it, I think this bill is the first effort in that. But as I say, it will have to be taken on, not just as seen as something that comes from on high, but is actually embraced by everyone on the ground, and that the byword of the industry from here on will have to be fair play, because that hasn't been the situation in the past. So I'll conclude at that, Colin. Thank you.
Deputy Kenny. Deputy Penrose.